Okay, hello everybody and welcome to this evening's webinar. My name is Philip and I'm a prospective student advisor at Flinders University, and tonight I'm going to be talking to you about information that is relevant for family, parents of young people who are thinking about coming to university. So I've got quite a bit that I'm going to cover tonight. And of course, I'm more than happy for you to ask any questions as we go as well. Just as a bit of housekeeping, so you're aware, for those of you who are joining us live, you should note that there is a chat box and you can put in any questions that you might have into the chat box. What I'll do is keep an eye on it as I go along, and then I'll look to answer your questions. And I guess depending on the number of questions that come in or the type of questions, I'll also let you know if perhaps I'm going to address it at the end, if it's perhaps a little bit more detailed. So please do pop any questions you have there, and I'll be more than happy to respond directly to you. Okay, so what I'll be going through this evening is a number of things. So I'm going to touch on higher education, why it is that a lot of people will consider higher education, some of the benefits that it does have going on to do further study, and specifically study at university. I'm going to talk a little bit about Flinders University as an institution and what we pride ourselves on and what we offer people who do choose to do their study with us. A little bit about our programs, pathways, and also how to apply. It's obviously really important at this time of year. As well as that, looking at costs, transition to university, some tips. I myself was a past student. I am a past student, as well as now a staff member. So I've been around the university for quite a number of years, and both in a student and staff role. So certainly I will be touching on some of the information relevant there. For anyone who might be looking at coming to Flinders from a regional location or perhaps interstate, then I'll briefly touch on living on campus, so on-campus accommodation, and then I'll finish off with, again, a few more tips around support that you as a family can give students. So yeah, there's quite a bit to cover, so I'll get going, and I note that we just have one more person join us, so welcome. Just so you know, you're very welcome to type any questions that you might have into the chat box as I go along. So no problem, I'll get straight into it. Okay, so higher education. Why do people look at doing higher education? Got down there as up on the screen there at the moment as higher education being the greatest gift. And there's a lot of reasons as to why we say this. We've got some points here on the screen. I won't necessarily go into all of these, but certainly a main motivator for going on to doing higher education are the opportunities that it does give you in terms of career prospects, and I guess the types of roles that you potentially go into, especially when you're studying something that you're really interested in and looking at going into a career in that area. And certainly then going on to do higher education will often correlate with job satisfaction, as well as improved opportunities for work, as well as income as well. So certainly within those sort of areas and looking at careers, there are a lot of benefits of going on to do further study, and especially if you're looking at going on to do higher education, bachelor degree, or other types of qualifications. We've got in there transferable skills are multiplied. Now this is really, really important, especially as we look at the world of work and how that is changing and the types of skill sets that employers are looking for. And I guess what we're seeing less of are people who are going into careers and then staying in the one job or the one career for their entire working life. And so at university, especially at Flinders, we have a very strong focus on all our graduates coming out with a wide range of transferable skills that can then be taken into a variety of different workplaces upon graduation, and obviously opening up a lot of different opportunities. So that's a really important part of higher education, are those transferable skills. Already mentioned in terms of better employment opportunities and higher income. There is also the fact that university is a really important, fun, and I guess challenging time of a person's life as they go in to study, both in terms of academic-wise, as you're exposed to new theories and new ways of looking at things and new knowledge. It's a really exciting thing, especially when you're so passionate about the area you're studying. as well as that, university is a chance to open your eyes to new things and meet a lot of new people, meet people with similar interests, get involved in different clubs and societies. University in that respect can certainly be, and is often reflected on it as one of the best times of your life. So there's a lot of, I guess, a lot of positives for those who are considering higher education. So a little bit about Flinders. Flinders University is in the top 2% of universities worldwide, and we also have a lot of new facilities that we're really proud of. And like I've mentioned, I am a past student here. I thought that Flinders was an excellent place to study, both for the academic side of things as well as the social side. Since I've finished studying, students are now have the benefit of a range of new, most up-to-date facilities possible. So our new Tonsley campus down South Road is a purpose-built campus for our engineering, computer science and mathematical students, which is a completely purpose-built and new, I guess a campus that really reflects the new way of learning. Very open design, and students are working alongside professionals in their field down at Tonsley, and very practical focused. We also have our new student hub and plaza on our main campus as well. So this was opened very recently and is a space for students to use as they wish. It's a student space. It's where they can go to socialise, to study. It's got a multimedia room, a large screen for students to be able to do work on, or to sit back and relax. And there's a variety of different computer labs, meeting rooms for students to be able to access 24/7, and it's a really exciting space and a very social space. So we're very pleased about our new student hub, and we'd certainly encourage you to come and visit us to check that out at some point. And I've also mentioned that we do have on-campus accommodation as well, which I'll touch on a little bit later. A little bit more, I guess, about Flinders. We pride ourselves on being a very student-friendly university. So students are the centre of everything that we do, and we're very focused on making sure that students are having a good experience and they feel very supported whilst on campus, and they have the opportunity to get involved in a lot of fun and exciting things as well. So certainly my reflections and the reflections of many students that come through our university is that it is a really good place to be while you're spending your study here. It's a very beautiful campus, very aesthetically pleasing campus. We are in the foothills of Adelaide, and there's a lot of space for students to be able to relax between classes or to study, whether it's on our various lawns or looking over the lake, or looking over the views of the city in Glenelg. It's a very beautiful campus. You can be right in amongst it in the student hub, around lots of different people, or you can always find your own space to relax and do your own thing as well. So I think we're quite unique in that respect, our campus, and again, we would always be happy to have you here if you would like to check us out. Obviously as well, our excellence in teaching. So across all our programs at the university, we have academics are at the top of their field teaching our students and developing new research and new teaching methods so that our students get the best academic opportunity possible. And many of our academics have won a range of national awards for teaching at a tertiary level. I'll touch on support for students in more detail in a little while. But we do offer a range of support services for our students so that when they're on campus and when they're studying, if they do need anything, we make sure that we can provide that support for students. So I'll go into more detail on that a little bit later on. We do have on-site parking at Flinders as well, so for students, depending on how they're choosing to come to uni, they might take public transport, but a lot of students will drive, and we do have parking available for students as well, so it is quite a convenient campus to get to be able to park and then spend your day here. Courses relevant to a new century, so I was talking a bit about transferable skills before, and certainly this is an area that Flinders focuses on very strongly, and making sure that our courses are up to date and linked with emerging industries and job areas where students will do their courses and then look to go into fields of work that the future is that is where the future is. So we keep up to date with how jobs and industry is changing and make sure that our courses are relevant to that. And international focus. We have over 90 partner universities across the world that we partner with, and they give us opportunities to send our students, if they wish to do so, on exchanges or shorter trips overseas to get a global perspective on the area that they're studying. And there's a lot of opportunities across all degrees at Flinders for students who want to travel and to study their degree in another country as part of their program here. So yes, we have a very strong international focus at Flinders. Okay, so programs, just briefly, certainly if there are any parents or families who are tuning in and perhaps this is a first son or daughter to go through or to apply for university study, there is a lot of new terms and information to get used to, so I'll try and touch on some of those things and hopefully make things a little bit clearer for you as you're looking through the information. So for us, if your son or daughter is applying, they'll be applying most likely for an undergraduate course, so that is their first degree, sometimes also known as a bachelor degree. For most of our degrees that are single degrees, they are usually 3 or 4 years in length. So depending on what program your son or daughter is interested in, it may be that they're looking to apply for a degree that is 3 years in length, or it could be a little bit longer. We also do have what we call double degrees, which are 2 programs that you do as one study package, and so you do those 2 programs together, and they're usually between 4 and 6 years in length. So double degree doesn't mean double the work, but it does mean that you study 2 different degrees that are in one as part of your course. So for example, if you were looking at an education degree, a number of our education degrees are double degrees. So you might do education with arts or education with science or health sciences. There's a number of different options. We also have combined degrees, which is where a student has chosen to combine one course with another. As you look at the different courses that we have, for a lot of our programs, they will also include combined options. So that's where the university has approved for students to be able to take one degree and combine it with another. So that's up to them if they want to do that. So certainly for a lot of students who perhaps have a number of interests or a couple of different study areas that they really want to do, if it's offered as a combined option, then they can choose to do that. And certainly again, with dynamic and changing flexible working and job industries, often being educated in more than one area can be an advantage when looking at applying for work. And as well as that, concurrent degrees. You might not see this term as commonly, but a concurrent degree is when someone has chosen to study 2 degrees at the same time. Now, so this means that they haven't been formally set up as a combined option, but a student has chosen to apply for both and studies both of them at the same time, part-time. So you would study both degrees part-time, but all at the same time. And that will, because that's usually, I guess, a unique combination or individual combination for that student, usually it will be at least 5 years to complete 2 degrees concurrently. Depending on what the areas are, it could be 5 or more years. Okay, so looking at how you can get into university. There are a number of different pathways into university, and often one of the myths that we need to bust is that if you haven't finished, if you didn't finish school or didn't get an ATAR, that university is not an option for you. That's not the case. There are a number of different options or pathways into university study. So at the top there we have Year 12, and certainly that is the strongest pathway for those who are in Year 12 or in high school and looking to come into university after they finish school. For students who achieve an ATAR, that is what we're looking at as to whether they're going to be competitive for the program that they've applied for. So each year, for most courses, there will be a ATAR from last year. So for this year, we would say the 2017 ATAR, and also a guaranteed entry ATAR. Now, the guaranteed entry ATAR means that if a student achieves that ATAR or above, then they will be guaranteed a spot in that program. If you look at what the ATAR was last year, that is the minimum that someone got into that course last year. So that's what we call the competitive cutoff. So if a student doesn't achieve the guaranteed entry ATAR, it doesn't mean that they're not going to be made an offer. It'll depend on what the cutoff is this year for competitive entry, and that is year by year, because it is a competitive process where we look at the different candidates or the different applicants who have applied for that course. So that's briefly the difference between an ATAR and a guaranteed entry ATAR. I'll talk about Uni Test in a moment, which is an opportunity for Year 12 students to potentially boost their Flinders ATAR, but I'll talk about that shortly. Now we've also got TAFE SA pathway on there as well. For some students it might be during Year 12 or it might be after Year 12 who've chosen to do a TAFE or VET course, whether that's through school or after school. We consider TAFE or VET qualifications as an entry pathway into university. If someone has a certificate 4 or above, so diploma, advanced diploma for example, then there will be a number of programs at Flinders University that they have guaranteed entry into, which obviously can be a really strong pathway depending on what they want to study. If your son or your daughter have a certificate 3, then that will still be considered depending on what you're applying for. So it's really important that if you are on a TAFE or VET pathway, that you have a chat to us about what some of your options for university study can be, because again, that is a really strong pathway. As well as that, we've got this the second line here, adult entry. So this is looking at alternative pathways to Year 12. And a lot of students do come in through pathways alternative to Year 12. For example, the STAT test, the Special Tertiary Admissions Test, is a once-off sitting of a test that students sit, and they receive a result based on this test, and we can admit people into programs based on that result. So the STAT test is sometimes known as an adult entry test. That is another option that people who are over the age of 18 can choose to sit and then apply for study at university. I've already talked a little bit about TAFE, and then we've also got the Flinders Foundation Studies program, which is a program that students who meet the requirements for the program do a 3 to 7 month program, depending on the option that you choose, daytime, nighttime, and it's designed to prepare you for university study and can also give you a pathway into the university as well. So that's a really good option, especially for those who are perhaps looking at returning to study after a number of years since they've last studied. So certainly the Foundation Studies program, if you're interested in that, to go onto our website and visit the Foundation Studies page, or get in contact with us and we can talk to you more about it. And tertiary transfer I'll just briefly touch on, and I guess the main message here is that once a student starts at university, there is scope to change courses. A lot of people may start and realise that the course they've gone into isn't for them, and once you've got a start, you can apply internally to transfer between programs at Flinders University, or perhaps if you've got a start at another university and you're interested in coming to Flinders, you can still apply for a new application to come to Flinders, and we would look at your grades from your university study. So there's options there. The other thing that a lot of people might do when it comes to transferring courses is if you perhaps miss out on the ATAR required for your course of choice, then having backup preferences in a Sator application is really important. And some students may get into their second choice in a related field, start studying, and if their grades are high enough, they can apply for a transfer into that course they missed out on in the first instance. So that's the type of advice that we can certainly give students. If your son or daughter is wondering what their backup preferences should be for their application, then certainly we can help them there, and I guess give them advice on what might be the most relevant backup options to have in their application. Okay. So how to apply? Applications for university study is through SATAC, so the South Australian Tertiary Admissions Centre. We've got their website up there, so satac.edu.au. SATAC handle our applications for us, and this is how you would apply if you wanted to come to Flinders University. Now the first closing date has already passed, so the 29th of September, however you can still put in an application if you haven't already done so. The late closing date is Monday the 4th of December. Now this means that if you were to put in an application now, It will still be considered the same as people who got it in before the 29th of September. Unfortunately, you will need to pay a late fee, but it will still be considered equally to everybody else. So if your son or daughter hasn't put in a Sator application yet, then they will need to do so before the 4th of December and make sure they have paid those fees that are involved with that. Now, once an application is in, there is quite a long time, as you can see, until the 3rd of January, where you can log back into your Sator application and make changes to your preferences. So for some people, especially if they're in the middle of year 12 and they've got a lot on their mind, exams coming up, last assignments, they've done a bit of research, they've put in their preferences, but then perhaps once they've finished their exams, they have a bit more of a look and realise there's another program that they hadn't applied for, or they want to change the order of their preferences, they can log back in and do that. It's a really important point. Even once they've received their ATAR, and I'll show you a timeline in a moment, once they receive their ATAR, there's still a few weeks there to make changes if required. And again, this is where us at the Prospective Students Office at Flinders are more than happy to help you throughout this period. In terms of offers, once ATARs are out and the change of preference date has passed, then the main offer date is Tuesday the 16th of January. And so, excuse me, so if you are eligible for an offer, then the 16th of January is when you would be expecting to get that offer. Sorry, just a quick drink of water. Okay, so some offers can potentially be made before that date, especially if you're applying with not with year 12 results, but perhaps with TAFE qualifications or a stat test result. So, but yeah, the main offer date is the 16th of January. In terms of a little bit more of a timeline, so I've been through a few of these dates. So SATAC applications opened at the start of August. We've passed the 29th of September. So the next important date is that 4th of December of making sure applications are in. In late December for year 12s, their results will come out. We'd encourage year 12s at that point to give us a call. We can have a look at their application. We can have a look as to whether they're eligible for any bonus points and give advice accordingly. The 3rd of January, the change of preference date. The 16th of January, the main offer round. Now, there are some later offer rounds in January and February if perhaps if preferences have changed or later round offers are being made to courses. So again, that's why it's important to give us a call. If, for example, you weren't made an offer on the 16th of January, give us a call. We can have a look and see if there's anything that you can change in your application to make you competitive for a later round offer. And in terms of university beginning for 2018, Orientation Week, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment, begins from Monday the 19th of February, and then classes week 1 is from the 26th of February 2018. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about this already, but in terms of how to apply, as mentioned through SATAC, now students have a total of 6 preferences that they can use, so up to 6 preferences. Like I said before, it's really important that applicants do consider their backup preferences, and again, we can give advice on what are the best backup preferences for the course of choice. So some students may use all 6 preferences, others might not use all of them, but it's always important to have at least one backup preference in your application, just in case you don't meet the requirements for your first preference. So that's about considering pathways. It is really important to pay the application fee. Now, SATAC are not able to assess applications or progress with assessing them until application fees are paid. So I would encourage you as parents or the family to double check, make sure, hassle to make sure that those fees have been paid, so they're not forgotten. And it is also really important for year 12s, I guess this is aimed at, that to use an email that's accessible next year. Sometimes students might use their school email, but then early into 2018 or the next year, you find that you're not able to access it anymore because you're no longer a student at the school. So our recommendation there would be to use a personal email address. Now, in terms of selection to courses, as mentioned before, that is based, if a year 12, then it is based, this is specifically looking at year 12s on the left-hand side here. So selection is based on completion of SACE-IB or an interstate year 12 qualification. We look at your ATAR, as I was talking about the competitive entry and the guaranteed entry before. Some students may be eligible for bonus points, and I would encourage you to give us a call if you're not sure, or if you'd like to find out what your adjusted ATAR with bonus points is, if you're eligible for bonus points. And again, I'll be talking in the next slide about the uni test. A few other things to consider. Some programs may have prerequisites. Now, they're usually subjects that you need to have done at high school or in year 12 to be able to go into that program. So, for example, for a lot of our engineering programs will require a certain level of maths. So check whether there are any prerequisites for the courses that you're applying for. If you've done those subjects that are listed, then great, no problems. We'll just then be considering the ATAR. If you haven't done a prerequisite, but you want to apply for that program, talk with us, because we can talk about what some of the pathways to that degree might be. You may also see assumed knowledge for some degrees. Now, this means that we recommend you have done this subject, but you don't have to get into the program. So you can still apply for programs in your SATEC application, even if you don't meet the assumed knowledge criteria. Additional entry requirements. Now, most programs don't have additional entry requirements, however, some do. So mostly in our creative arts programs, some programs will have additional requirements to put in a portfolio, or perhaps to attend an interview, or even an audition. So especially if you're looking at the creative arts, you would need to have a look into those additional entry requirements. You can find those on our website. And there are a number, as mentioned before, of alternative entry pathways to university. So if you sit the STAT test, then we'll be considering your STAT result. If you've done TAFE or VET qualifications, we'll be assessing the level of qualification that you have. Or if you've done the Foundation Studies program, we'll be looking at your score from Foundation Studies. Okay, I've mentioned the uni test a few times. So for any parents of Year 12s that are tuned in this evening, the uni test is an opportunity for Year 12s to sit an aptitude test that will be considered alongside their ATAR for Flinders University courses. So this is specifically for Flinders. It's it's recognising that there are certain types of learning or types of knowledge or skill sets that are not always reflected in Year 12 exams, and for students who do well in the aptitude tests of the uni test, we will consider that, and potentially it can boost their chances of getting into Flinders courses. So for a lot of students, their schools may have signed up to do the uni test at school and may have even already done it. If you're interested, obviously have a chat with your son or daughter, check whether they had that opportunity at school. But if they haven't done it, there is still opportunity if they get in touch with the university to organise a time to do it on campus. So my recommendation here is to email unitest@flinders.edu.au, and we can provide more information there. But for parents, be aware that there's no disadvantage from sitting the uni test. If students do well, it can increase their chances of entry. If they don't do so well, it's not going to help their ATAR. We don't use it. It can't affect their ATAR, can't drag it down. So if they don't do so well in the uni test, we just look at their ATAR as it is. Okay, so moving on to costs. Now, this is an area that we obviously get a lot of questions, especially again with parents and families who are looking at their son or daughter going to university. So I'm going to go into HEX in a little bit more detail on the next slide. HEX being the opportunity for eligible students to defer the costs of their course to be paid back once they're earning over a certain amount. So deferring the fees for your course is on a HEX help loan, and I'll go into more detail on that in the next slide. Scholarships. Now that we have a range of scholarships offered by Flinders University for students that can be for a range of different eligibility or criteria. So we have a lot of scholarships that are based on financial need or background, and we also have scholarships that are based on academic merit as well. So I would certainly recommend that for students, once they've got an offer into Flinders, is to have a look at our scholarships database online and to apply for any scholarships that they might be eligible for. And certainly, again, these can be very helpful when it comes to some of the costs involved with university. If you choose to defer your fees, there are still some costs that come with university that you'll need to be aware of. For example, textbooks and materials. So often topics will have some requirements for students to have a textbook or readers, and often they will need to be purchased. So they are a cost that do need to be factored into university. Each semester you may be required to purchase some textbooks. We do of course have a thriving student community at the university and online discussion boards and opportunities for students to advertise their second-hand textbooks that they used the year before. So certainly once students are here, they'll be able to get start to learn where they can look for perhaps second-hand options for textbooks, as well as the opportunity to buy them first-hand online as well. But then again, a lot of topics may offer online readings that perhaps won't require them to be purchased. And depending on what you're studying, you might find there are other costs. It might be lab equipment of science, or medical equipment if you're doing a health or medicine type course, and sometimes excursions and various costs involved with that type of thing. And parking as well is at a cost, so you do need to purchase a permit. 2017 it was $175 for the full year. If you're looking at accommodation, accommodation does also need to be paid for, and I'll touch on that a little bit later on as well. Okay, so HECS helps. So I was talking a little bit about deferring the fees. So if you are eligible as an Australian citizen on a permanent humanitarian visa, then you are eligible to apply for a HECS help loan and to defer the costs of your course. So the costs of university degrees are set by the government, and that's across all universities in Australia. Now the costs of the course are divided into 3 bands, which we've got outlined on the slide here. So depending on what your son or daughter is studying, they'll have a different amount that they pay for the topics that they do. Now the 2018 rates have not been released at this point, so the information up on the screen is the 2017 costs for courses. And you can get a bit of an idea depending on what they're studying as to what costs will be. So for example, if a student was studying a 3-year psychology degree, they would be in band 1, and based on 2017 rates, they'd be paying approximately $6,349 per year. So for a 3-year degree, it'd be approximately $19,000 based on 2017 rates. So if you were to apply for a HECS help loan and you're eligible, so it's accepted, you do not need to pay those fees up front. You can, though, choose to pay the fees up front, either wholly or partially. But if you do choose to defer your fees, that you will be notified each year as to what your HECS help loan is. And what happens with a HECS help loan is once you're earning over a certain amount, you start paying that loan back. So at the moment, again, based on current rates, if you are earning so over $55,874 per annum, over that amount, you will start repaying your HECS help loan. So at a 4% rate if you're within that first threshold. So if you were earning below that amount, you don't start paying back your HECS help loan. So that's, I guess, briefly how the HECS help loan scheme works. And for students who are eligible to apply, one of the first steps when you've gotten accepted into a course is that we send you information about enrolling in topics and prompt you to fill out a Commonwealth Assistance form, which is your application for a HECS help loan. But of course, more than happy to take any questions about that. Okay, now I better get a bit of a move on. Once a student is accepted into study, university, I guess, compared to perhaps school, is very flexible, and there's a lot of opportunities. And this will differ again from degree to degree depending on what you're studying. But for a lot of degrees, there are opportunities to study part-time. There's opportunities to take leave from your degree if you have other circumstances or different commitments that you need to attend to. Studying part-time will mean that your degree will take longer to finish, but if it's what you need to do to be able to balance your study out with other commitments, then that is an option in most courses. As mentioned before, there are opportunities to change degrees once you are started, if you change your mind or if you want a pathway into another degree. I've talked a little bit about international exchanges, the opportunity to go overseas, and there's also a range of clubs and societies on campus that students can get involved in. So it might be relevant to your degree, where like-minded people come together and organise social events or networking events, or it could be something completely different. It might be playing a sport, or it might be one of those interest areas like the Harry Potter Society that that's something you're really passionate about, and you can meet new people and organise events. So university is a very flexible place, and it's something where you can work your timetable around your different commitments that you have in life. Okay, in terms of transition to higher education, it can be quite a tricky transition at times, or perhaps one that will take some students by surprise in terms of how different it can be from high school. And so certainly there's a number of things that we can identify as being different. It might be that you get to pick your own timetable at university and you don't have to be on campus when you're not in class. You can balance your time, you can pick your timetable and work it around other things like part-time work. It's also a lot more independent, and this often is something that high school students might find takes a little bit of time to get used to, is that teachers don't follow you up for your drafts or for submitting your assignments. It is up to you, and it is, I guess, a big step, and it is something that students need to develop their confidence in terms of being able to speak up when they need assistance, to make sure that they're balancing everything that they need to do. So I guess that's something that as a parent you might find that your son or daughter comes back and says, I'm a bit unsure, I haven't been told how to do something in particular. I'd encourage you to encourage them to ask the questions, to get in touch, because that's how it works at university, and there's a lot of people who are more than happy to give the help when asked. Orientation week is really important in this respect, because this is an opportunity for students to start to get to know the different services on campus and where to go to get help, and just go to some sessions that really do start introducing students to what university life is like, as well as an opportunity to start finding out about different clubs and societies, meeting people, going to social events. So certainly orientation week's a really important week, the one before week 1. And we do have a range of support services on campus at Flinders, so both personal and academic. So on the academic side, if a student is having trouble with various parts of their work, if it's topic specific, then they have their tutors and lecturers that they can go to and speak with and get help with. If it's looking at things like essay structure or referencing and those types of skills, then we have the Student Learning Centre that can sit down one-on-one with students and give them help, tailored help for them, and students can make appointments to have those sessions. As well as that, we also have personal help. So if a student is, if there's unfortunate things happening in life and study is struggling as a result, then we have counsellors on campus that can potentially work with students to put together a learning plan with their lecturers if they need to do that. We also have a health and counselling clinic on campus, disability services as well. So again, a range of services that are there for students. As well as that, we have a careers office. So for a lot of students coming to university to study, is all about looking at what their future career will look like, and our careers office and our careers counsellors are there to be able to help students map out what it is that they want to do and how best to get there. So it might be getting involved in extra opportunities, network events, might be going to resume writing and job interview workshops, and there's a lot of services that are fantastic services that students can take advantage of. I touched earlier a little bit on some of the differences between school and university, and so I've talked a little bit about time management. I guess some of the other differences are the types of classes that students do at university, and this can take a little bit of time to get used to. So we have lectures, tutorials, seminars, laboratories, practical classes depending on what you're studying. Some courses might have field work, group work, independent study, placements in industry, as well as opportunities for studying abroad. So quite a lot of different opportunities or different types of classes that students will be doing. It's one of those things that takes a little while to get used to, but certainly for a lot of students, if they're passionate about what they're studying and they like being independent, then certainly they may find that university suits their learning style. For others, it might take a little more time to get used to, and again, with any support that you can give during that time to help them with that transition, I'm sure will make it an easier time for them. And certainly, again, that's where we can come in and help as well. In terms of university, of course, again, a big social side of university as well. So for a lot of students, they don't necessarily come to class and then just go home. They'll stay and do their study as well as get involved in different events as well. And that's, I guess, quite a different kind of community feel from school to university. And yeah, I guess the more that you do get involved in university, generally the more that students will enjoy their time while studying. And in terms of part-time work, we get asked the question quite often in terms of how much work can a student do whilst they're studying, and it is different for every student, of course. I guess the main piece of advice I like to give is that if you're starting your study, try where possible to not take on too much part-time or casual work in that first semester or first year. Get to know yourself as a university student in terms of how long you need to give yourself to get your study done well, and try and I guess work your paid work around that. And obviously it's not always as easy as that, but where possible that is a good idea. University should be treated as a full-time commitment, like a full-time job, but certainly, of course, the reality is a lot of students will be doing paid work around that as well. So try and, where possible, I guess, as we said there, be realistic and not take on too much extra work at the start, and give yourself a chance to settle in before making it too much of a hard balance. Okay, so as well as that, I guess sort of coming from all those points, it is a new routine, and again, the first semester is the hardest, and there'll be a lot of different changes that you may see your son or daughter going through in terms of socially, and you know, meeting new people, maybe finding it harder to catch up with old friends, and depending on how many people they know at the university, it might be quite a daunting experience starting at a big institution. But rest assured, of course, that students straight away will have the opportunity to meet a lot of like-minded people within their degree whilst they're studying. Often it can be an emotional time in the first 6 months as new routines are set in and out of your comfort zone, and might be the stress of a different style of study, and especially when assignments start coming in. So again, this is the type of area where I guess you know, as families, we would encourage you to give as much support as possible. And academically as well, as mentioned, it is quite a different style of learning at university, and so often students might find that they're doing learning or assignments that they've never done at school, and again, that's where services can come in and help. Ask questions, seek out the help, and we can provide that help. And it's very different, a very different environment at school. Again, no bells. It is up to students as to how they use their time when they're not in class, and it is a very large campus. We have over 25,000 students that attend Flinders University, so I think it's fair to say that that's probably more than most, if not all, schools, and so it is quite a different experience. And I guess again that students will generally have most of their classes in one area of the university, and will see people who are studying the same degree sort of in different classes. So although it is a very large campus and a lot of people, students will generally still find their niche, both in terms of where they choose to do their study as well as people that they meet. Okay, so some of the keys to successful learning, I won't go into detail on these, but just to touch on them. University jargon, it is a thing, and certainly I and my colleagues that are helping students come into university try and explain it, and not to use it too much without explaining different terms, but you will come across university terms that you may not have seen before. So again, certainly ask the questions if you have it, if you're not sure about anything. We do have information on our website in terms of explaining different jargon, but certainly again ask any questions that you might have. For students, so I guess most of these tips are for students, but ones that you can perhaps reflect on if they ask you the question. It is really important to ask questions at tutorials and lectures. You know, students are there for their own, you know, they've chosen to be there, so we don't want them to be shy. If they have a question, definitely ask it. It's really important that students check their email. Now, they'll have a student email address once they're in a course, and important information is sent to that. So if they're not in the habit of checking their emails every day, checking a student email is really, really important. And unfortunately, it's not necessarily a very good excuse that you didn't check your email if you haven't got a piece of work in or attended something that was sent to you via email. Again, a lot of support facilities, encourage your sons or daughter to use them if they need it. Talked about treating uni as a 9-to-5 job. Students need to give themselves time to settle in. They won't necessarily be in their comfort zone from day one. They won't know where everything is from day one. Orientation week is a good opportunity to give yourself a head start, but also, I guess, psychologically giving yourself time to settle in as well is really important. And spend time getting to know other students. I remember my first lecture being told that best thing you can do is to sit down next to someone and introduce yourself so you've met someone on your first day. And it is really important that students go out of their way to make sure that they are meeting people right from the very beginning. And as mentioned, attending orientation is really important too. Support from families. Now, of course, again, this will differ from student to student. Everyone does their study differently, but I guess some of the key points that is really important if your son or daughter is living at home while studying, and then having a quiet study space at home is important, especially in certain times of the year. But again, of course, every student should take responsibility for how they do their study, but I guess providing them that space, if possible, is something good that you can do. Help develop a study routine. So again, we're not suggesting that you should dictate when they do their study, but encouraging study routine is really important. Ask your son or daughter when are the busy times going to be during semester. When are exams, when are breaks, and if you mark them on your own planner, again, without being overbearing, I guess it's an opportunity to just be aware what they might be going through. Some students may not let you know that they have an assignment due soon or an exam coming up, and it might explain if they're a bit stressed as to what's happening. Again, you may or may not. This will be different from student to student, but showing interest in what they're learning and asking them about their study might help them to reflect on what they're doing and helping them as they go about that process. Support and encouragement, really important, especially during busy periods, and again, suggesting that they do get in touch with support services if required. Now, I think I've been through all of these, other than to mention at the end there that if it's a family of a student who's looking to apply for study and perhaps needs to use childcare services, then we do have a childcare facilities on campus, and I just recommend that you Google Flinders University childcare to see some of the options there. Now, if we do have any regional people tuned in or watching this back at a later time, I'll briefly touch on the fact that we do have on-campus accommodation, and so this is something that needs to be applied for. What I'd recommend that you do is to visit the Flinders Living webpage. If you go onto our website and type in Flinders Living, you can read about the accommodation services we have, the extra support services that they provide, the on-campus living, which is catered, and as well as the on-campus options, which is more independent, and you can also see application information and fees online there as well. Now, I've just popped this slide. You might recognise it from before, just a reminder of some of those important dates. Monday the 4th of December, applications need to be in, and then the change of preference date, the 3rd of January. That brings me to the end. I have gone a little bit over time, but if you do have any questions, you're very welcome to pop those into the chat box now, and I'd be happy to answer them. But what I'll do while you're potentially putting in chat questions is just run through some of our contact details. So, of course, any questions that you might have at a later time, we're more than happy to take those. So if there are any international students who are looking at studying, then my advice would be to contact our international office. So I've got their details up there, and they can talk to you about applications and courses and that type of information. For domestic students, our office details are up on the screen now, so that's our phone number as well as our email address. And we do have a number of other webinars coming up in the near future, so like you signed up for this one, you can hop onto our website via that URL, or you can type in webinars from our website and sign up for any that you might be interested in. So yeah, that brings me to the end in terms of the information for tonight, and at this point no chat questions. So thank you very much for those of you who are signed in for joining me this evening. I hope the information has been useful, and again, we encourage you to get in touch with any questions that you might have, or to encourage your sons or daughter who are looking at applying for study with us to get in touch themselves. We'll be more than happy to go through anything with them. Also happy to host on campus as well. So thank you very much.